G'day, this is Scuba Steve, TDI instructor trainer and side mount diver, JJ rebreather diver, all round techie. I'm not a cave diver, but I'm sure you won't judge me too much for that. Today's talk is the pathway to technical diving. So for the new and budding techie who's got a bit of curiosity, we're going to look at how we would progress from a recreational diver and pursue a course for a particular discipline or environment in technical diving. So the way I'm going to structure this talk, we'll start with how you became curious. We'll look at a bit of the diving history, background, your experience, what level of diver you are. We'll look at what equipment you're diving in currently and what you might need to get to venture further into your diving exploits. And then we'll look at a few training courses and look at a pathway that goes right up to CCR and some of the advanced levels of open circuit. And I'll probably finish off with a little bit of what I call the tech compass: mechanical, biological, psychological and spiritual components of technical diving. Okay, let's kick it off. So first and foremost, you've been out diving on a boat with friends, and you've seen someone jump on the vessel with maybe a rebreather, maybe some side mount cylinders, a scooter, who knows, some extra equipment other than your standard single tank bank mount jacket style BCD with a standard configuration. So that's prompted a couple of questions in your mind. You may have even asked the divers on board, what's up with that guy? What's he doing? Why does he need two tanks? Well, sometimes you might dive in side mount or a rebreather, and it's not about you need one of those units to dive here, but it's about keeping, up with the amount of hours required on the unit. Just keeping in touch with the skills that you've learned and developed. So sometimes it's not people who are trying to strut around and show how much of a great diver they are. It's more about them continuing to practice their art. Okay, so you've got away questions. So you've started researching. You've got on YouTube, and you've gone down a few rabbit holes there, and you've found some great stuff, locations around the world. It might be mine diving or cave diving or wreck diving somewhere in the world. Okay, so you've gone on and had a look at web pages and maybe read bios, and maybe you've even picked up a book or a magazine and had a look into them. So your curiosity's got the better of you. You are now starting to ask questions, maybe look at budgets, where do I need to start and who do I need to talk to, where do I find the right instructor, all that sort of thing. Well, the next thing you're probably going to have to assess is what capacity do you have as a diver in terms of your diving history, your experience. What certifications have you got? What number of dives have you got? Have you dived in any other locations? With that in mind, let's just address the new diver. If you've recently done your open water and maybe just completed your advanced open water and your sub 50 dives, my advice to you at this point is go and get some more diving in. Taking on too much more in that short space of time is probably going to be a bit task loading, and you may end up embarking on a program or course that is probably going to stretch you a bit much and put you out of your comfort zone. You're going to have to up the equipment level. There are some things that you can do in your standard jacket, and while we're talking about equipment, maybe I should just start with this. If you don't have your equipment and you're that infrequent diver that doesn't dive regularly, doesn't practice, the art of diving often, and maybe you're a warm location or a holiday diver, then probably technical diving is not for you. I'm not saying don't do it, but if you haven't purchased your own gear and at least sunk a couple of grand into diving so far, then the financial leap from here is, it's going to create, either some problems at home with the chief financial officer, or you're going to really disrupt the level of pay packet. Technical diving's not cheap, instruction's not cheap, and nor should it be. We're doing stuff that is a lot more task loaded. It's a lot more complex. So maybe, rethink that and see where you're at. So, in terms of, I suppose, equipment and your ability as a diver, before I go into equipment, your setup, even if you've got a jacket, we're going to modify that slightly. We'll give you a long hose. We might set up your oki on a short hose, a necklace. But you'd want to be pretty comfortable holding a stop, doing mask drills without varying your buoyancy or position in the water. You're going to have to be able to launch an SMB really comfortably. Propulsion, trim, and buoyancy. I mean, these are hallmarks. So you have to be able to hold a position in the water column, while you're task loaded. You'll have to learn to back fin. Talking about buoyancy and that sort of thing, like if you're an open water diver and you did your course and unfortunately you had an instructor that made you do all your skills on your knees, well, I don't know how you learn any buoyancy skills from that, and quite frankly it's very antiquated and very lazy, not only on the part of the instructor but on the part of the agency. If you came from that style of training and background, well, I apologise. But you missed out on opportunities there to develop, and you got sold short. Prerequisites: you're probably going to need advanced open water as a minimum. Nitrox, deep are good suits to have. The types of equipment that you'll be introduced to, there are some what we call tech recreational BCDs out there. We have backplate and wings, which are the perfect place to start for the recreational diver transitioning into a technical arena. You can do a lot of things in a backplate and wing. Obviously they're designed to support extra stages. That's extra cylinders you tack on the side. You might be introduced to twins, back mount twins, although this is a fading discipline, with side mount now sort of being very dominant in the technical diving arena, due to the fact that it's very adaptable. It's a platform that lends itself to many disciplines, not just recreational but technical diving, multiple tank diving, deep trimix diving, cave diving, mine diving, anything overhead wreck, where you can basically put yourself through very small openings and change your position in the water, swing tanks, all of that. You'll learn that should you go down that path. The training courses that are available, you could do a solo course, which is a recreational course that obviously doesn't allow you to do decompression or overhead, but it teaches you redundancy. Because you're a solo diver and you're going to have a backup of everything. You've got a redundant air cylinder. I teach with an S40, so you've got, if it's 200 bar, you got about 1140, 1150 litres on board, which is very adequate. If you're diving with anything less than that, I would say like a 3 litre, barely adequate. If you're heading down to 40 metres and you haven't got a direct exit, in other words, you've got to work your way up the water column, maybe along a reef, or you've got to return to a shot line. There may be boat traffic overhead, whatever. So that 3 litre is going to be less than adequate for that kind of thing. So a solo course will teach you lots of things: backup masks, placement of equipment where you've got to go and get them, 2 cutting devices, maybe 2 signalling devices, 1 reflective, at least 1 torch, a couple of SMBs. You might want an emergency SMB, even a big reel that you can deploy deeper than your standard 15 metre spool with your SMB. So this will teach you a lot of skills that will translate into the technical diving arena. I recently was delivering another agency's solo course, and this particular main prime agency had no student materials. And I looked at the instructor guide and I thought that this is very inadequate for teaching this course. So I chose another agency. I chose their material to deliver the program. Of course, they got that prime agency cert, but with a lot more training and some useful and tactile and real world skills that they can take with them and perhaps will take them into technical diving down the track. Okay, so a solo course, you could do an intro to tech course, which you can do in your jacket and just add us an S40. You can have a backplate and wing, which would be slightly more beneficial, not necessary, but slightly more beneficial. And of course, twins or a side mount configuration. If you're thinking about going tech, then side mount might be the platform you want. And as we said before, it's very versatile. It has a lot of applications and can take you to wherever you go, including side mount CCR, closed circuit rebreather. So in terms of the open circuit technical disciplines, side mount is my go-to platform. And I would endorse that for most of my technical diving training. I've got to say, out of all the years, I've had 1 back mount twin student, two back mount twin student, and one of those transitioned to side mount very soon after. The other one is just, he's kind of a bit tight on dollars, or just a bit tight, I don't know. Okay, the training courses, we mentioned solo, intro to tech and side mount. There is no real course for back mount twins, although you could do intro to tech in back mount twins. That wouldn't be a problem. You could probably do solo in back mount twins. Why would you do those courses? Well, maybe you just want a bit of redundancy. Maybe you're a photographer and a solo course is a great course for photographers and videographers. They end up almost inadvertently on their own, away from the group, because they don't want the distraction or the interaction from the other divers, or they don't want the other divers cramping their style and ruining their shots, so to speak. All right, so where does the real training start? Well, that's something that you probably need to sit down with the instructor and maybe look at a map, a pathway, and that is what this presentation's about, okay, what are your goals and aspirations? Make them realistic. I want to dive the Mariana Trench. Well, that's a one-way trip for all divers of any level, unless you're in a submersible that's specifically built for that application. So maybe I want to go to Truck Lagoon, I want to dive the Coolidge, I want to go and dive the local caves in Mount Gambier. Then whatever instructor you have got local to you, that is a technical diver himself, not someone who just does it on the side as part of their recreational training. No, you want a proper technical diving instructor, not someone who can just self-certify and call himself technical because he wears some technical gear. All right, so you talk to that instructor, you tell him where you want to go, what you want to do, and that's where it begins. You'll probably be able to talk to some other mates or diving compatriots who have been down the path you're now pursuing, and they will obviously give you some help and some pointers. And that is normally where most techies start. They'll start with talking with other techies. All right. So we go intro to tech, back mount, twins, side mounts. What is the next step? Well, you'll go advanced nitrox and deco procedures. This is the first of the TDI platform. They are two separate courses, but they are rarely taught individually. First and foremost, if you do an advanced nitrox course, you're going to be able to dive up to 100% oxygen. That doesn't have a real application unless you're using it for very shallow diving, and then the time you can spend on oxygen is a little bit restrictive anyway. You wouldn't want to spend more than 30-40 minutes on pure oxygen, because it starts to affect our airways and our alveoli and our lungs by giving us a form of oxygen toxicity called pulmonary oxygen toxicity. Anyway, you'll learn that through the course of later development. On from advanced nitrox, so here's the application of that particular course, is decompression procedures. So when we come up in the water column from a decompression dive, we can dive on oxygen-rich mixtures, 50% and above, or above 40%, to accelerate our decompression program. So, I mean, I don't know if any of you have already been like little bits of deco, but air is very inefficient as a deco gas. And just, by way of comparison, if you clock up a 20-minute decompression on air, just by using 40 or 50 mix, nitrox 50, you'll more than halve that. So, and if you add oxygen to that equation, you'll probably skin a few more minutes off that as well. Okay, so advanced nitrox and deco procedures, what's involved in that? It's a minimum of 6 dives. You're going to be diving multiple cylinders. It's typically only one decompression gas, but sometimes taught with 2, depending on the capacity of the student. You have a maximum depth of 45 meters, and you can have as long a deco as you want. You're only limited by the gas you carry, and of course some basic rules for technical diving, having enough reserve in case things go wrong, all of that. Beyond advanced nitrox and deco, there's the deep air program called Extended Range. It's a 55 metre program. This is still quite popular in remoter areas, and where people, don't want to spend the money on helium. Just recently I was in Bali. Helium's getting harder to get and quite expensive there. Beyond ER55 is Trimix 60, which is the helium, which we can do 60 meters again, and we're looking at least 4 bottles for that, maybe a travel gas on top of that. And beyond that, the open circuit is Trimix 100, and we're looking at 5 or 6 bottles of gas for that one. Now you could go from maybe advanced nitrox and deco. I think that's the very minimum, in my opinion. You could go across to semi-closed rebreather or closed circuit rebreather. I've dived both. My first rebreather unit was the Mara's Horizon. Currently dive a JJ, and I'm Mod 1 Heliotrox, nothing fantastic, but I've done 130 hours in it. I dive it mostly in Bali, and I just get behind a camera and I do deep macro. That's what you can do. That's the process of getting towards those certifications outside of the entry level. You may want to do these kind of disciplines or diving certs for a number of reasons, because you want to go into overhead, you want to go and do the deep wrecks in Truck Lagoon, you want to go in to dive the caves, not only here locally in the stunning caves of Mount Gambier, but maybe you want to go overseas and dive in some of the cave and or mines. Mines are becoming very, very popular over in Europe and even Thailand. So I might finish up with this. I said I'd talk about the tech diving compass, which is mechanical, biological, psychological and spiritual. So I'm just going to maybe just brush over those so that I can give you a bit of the mindset and what goes around in the technical diving circles. Firstly, mechanical. You have to be very fluid and almost at one with your equipment. Your equipment is an extension of you. So in terms of a side mount diver, you're very confident doing one-handed gas switches. You can unclip and reclip tanks, move tanks around underwater, swap tanks with other divers underwater. You know where all your gear's stowed intuitively. Like, you don't have to look. You just reach around, undo a zip on your bum bag or your rear bag, and you know where things are stacked in there because you've put them in a particular place in the bag, or you've stacked them on a way that you can feel where they are, so you can pull out that bit of kit that you need when you need it efficiently and effectively. So the mechanical side of thing is about knowing where everything is and being able to operate our equipment very easily, intuitively, and with efficiency. The second thing is biological. So not all of us have the same biology, and I'm looking at mine, my own frail and aging sort of mortality here, but we're not all the same in terms of how our body adapts to technical diving. And the average age of technical divers, we're probably in the 45 to 50 range, and you've got to put that in the context that really mainstream technical diving has only been around since the 90s. It was very edgy and off the reservation before that, and some of the dive agencies such as TDI did not start until 1994. So mid-90s, maybe even up to 2000s. I mean, like Paddy didn't get involved until about 2000 with their own curriculum. So very late to the game. The biological thing, I mean, if you're that diver that, you're carrying a bit of extra bioprene, maybe you're not very fit, and, you're sort of up in years, you're a chain smoker, and you've had a few health issues. Every technical diving course has a fairly rigid physical requirement, and it requires a physician to sign off medically that you've got the biological capacity to deal with the complexity and stress of technical diving. I will say one thing. I've had a couple of female techies over the years, and they make great divers. And if you're a female and you're watching this, and you think, I'd like to be a technical diver, please do so. You're probably the more sensible out of all of us. Probably not quite as gung-ho. That does depart from you the older you get. I mean, you know the phrase, there are old divers and bold divers, but there's no old bold divers. The one downside of being a female, and I'm sorry to put it this way, But biologically, because you've got smaller lungs, yes, you don't breathe as much. And your respiration rates, RMV, sac rate, whatever you want to call it, is usually much better than a male because you're just built different biology, right? Okay, but here's the downside. You don't off-gas as cleanly. And normally for a female, you've got a few bumps and curves and a few more fatty tissues that love to store a bit of extra nitrogen. Okay, the psychological side, I mean, your mindset has got to be different. You have got to realise that, this is not for the loud, ego-driven, bravado type of divers. Usually the type of people that engage in technical diving are very meticulous. They're from a mathematical background or maybe have military or even aviation experience where they're used to things like checklists and they're quite strict in how they perform certain rituals and as they gear up and get ready to go technical diving. So there's a bit of a mindset to it. And last but not least, the spiritual side of things. This is not for everyone, but I treat the ocean as a sacred space, a place to find a bit of peace, and often I self-dialogue there. So it's a place where you're away from the hustle and bustle of the noise of life, work, whatever politics your friends and family bring. So I find it a safe space to get within my own consciousness, in my own mind, and sometimes I resolve a lot of things underwater. That turns out to be beneficial. So things like intuition, communion, conscience, connectivity, those sort of, what we would say new age words, they have a place. The thing is, with technical divers, there's a sense of community, and even when there are accidents and even fatalities, we're all very interested and concerned because we want to know how we can prevent those sort of tragedies from happening again, and we want to learn from each other. We're actually quite caring and sharing. There's good communion. The other thing is, with your intuition, you kind of develop a new sense of awareness, maybe call it spidey senses, and we kind of adopt an approach of, when something doesn't seem right, it usually isn't. And, when I have, 3 things that I consider, maybe not major, but 3 things that don't go right in a technical dive, that's kind of like, I feel that's my consciousness pricking me and saying, hey Steve, let's bail on this, or let's turn this dive about here and make our way back home. And it can be small things, like, I forgot my backup mask, my spare computer or my backup computer has gone flat on me, or I've not done something, I've left a torch behind, I've left a reel behind, some things, or I've had a free fly on a regulator that I've had to shut down that rig, or feather it for the dive. So things like that. Your overall awareness, your intuition, those things are going to be important if you're going to survive technical diving long term. All right, so quick recap. New techies, you're curious, you've got the reasonable sort of history and experience, you're keen to dip your toe in the water, already worked out, it's not going to be cheap, so there's no point trying to be cheap about it. That will lead you down a road that you'll be disenfranchised and frankly dissatisfied with. So don't go with cheap instructors. Cheap instructors are cheap for a reason. If you've got an instructor that wants to discount the crap out of courses just so he can get money in his pocket or get more people on the course, that instructor's not the guy for you. All right, be prepared to pay these people. Like as a tech instructor and now an instructor trainer for 4 years, I have invested lots and lots of time underwater, lots and lots of money in dive gear, and lots of time training other divers and being a student at times to learn my craft and to be comfortable, and yet I'm still learning and open to instruction from divers who have done some different things to me, have some different backgrounds and have some different disciplines. So pick a course that suits your level of entry and work at it. And once you've got that first level, consolidate. Don't jump too quickly. There are those, what we call them, satellite divers that want to go from zero to hero in the technical diving world. I really discourage that. Get some runs on the board, get comfortable in your gear. Don't do things out of your comfort zone, and don't race to be the greatest technical diver on earth. Put the ego aside, be humble, and learn and listen and emulate, and find a mentor who can teach you graciously and gradually. That's probably about it. Thanks for indulging. I hope this was helpful, and if so, get your techie on and you can go where sirens beckon.